Hello, everyone. We will wait a few seconds just for more people to join, and then we'll get started. People, please confirm that they can hear me fine.
Yeah, I can hear you. Morning, all.
Morning, AD.
I think you might be muted, Erica.
Yeah, I've got technical difference here, so don't worry, AD, it's fine.
I could see your lips moving, but no sound was coming out.
Hi, so everybody on the call at the minute, just to let you know, there's over 130 people on the call at the minute. So thanks very much for joining. We're just waiting a couple of seconds longer just to allow people to get connected, and then we'll be making a start.
Can I just confirm that people can see the slides fine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Good. Okay. I think I should start. We'll do some introductions, and then, by the time we get to the actual presentation, hopefully more people will have joined by then. So thank you so much for registering for this webinar. Like, we did not expect this number of attendees really, and we hope that, you know, it's going to be a little bit kind of helpful to all of you. Just a few housekeeping rules before we start. So this webinar is being recorded at the moment. So if you miss parts of it, or if any of your colleagues want to, you know, kind of tune in later, they could view the recording. I'll send you a link after we finish the webinar. We think it will be between 45 to 60 minutes, depending on the questions that we get really. We have some handouts if you want to download them. We have the Tier 2 frequently asked questions and the Wilson E3 brochure. So you should have like a panel on your left or right, and there's a section called handouts. As now all attendees will be on mute, if you want to comment or ask a question, there's a question box that you can type anything in. My team I have here, I'll introduce them in a bit, but they will keep an eye on the questions. They will answer them as we go in writing, but later on, if someone wants to kind of, you know, be unmuted and ask the question verbally, they can do that, but we'll leave that till the end. The questions that you send us are kind of, no one can see us but us, but if we think everyone can benefit from the answer, we'll kind of answer it publicly. But if you want to ask something like confidential, you know, you can do that. And I have with me here on the panel, Erica Wilson, the Managing Director, Harry, who's the Technical Director, and Ed Smithies, the Head of Sales and Marketing. If you want to say hi, everyone, before you go on mute.
Hi,
Oh, you are
mute, Harry.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Brilliant to have you all on board. So, yeah, we'll look forward to answering your questions throughout and supporting Ayah. So, I'm sure most of you possibly know us all. So, yeah, hopefully enjoy it.
Good morning, and yeah, certainly we're here to answer any questions, anything at all. Just put that in writing during the slide presentations, and I think this will be available on video afterwards as well. There's a lot of information packed into this one, so when we get started, we'll motor on through. Thank you.
Great. Harry's a bit camera shy, but he's your guy for any technical questions. So he'll be there answering them. Okay, so if I may ask everyone to go on mute, off camera. I'll turn my camera off as well, just to make sure that, you know, the connection is good throughout. But you should be able to see my screen as it is. Okay. So just to briefly go through the agenda, we'll start by, I'll introduce myself a bit because I don't know many of you, and we'll do an introduction about Wilson Power Solutions. We'll go through the reason behind the regulation and why it came about in the first place. Then I'll go through the important bits of the legislation and what it entails. And then onto the kind of unclear bits about what you can and cannot do while transitioning from Tier 1 to Tier 2. I'll explain some definitions that you might read but not fully understand in the regulation, as it keeps referring to the Blue Guide, which is kind of like the Bible for the regulation. We will look at loss levels and comparisons between Tier 1 and Tier 2. And I will then mention the concession cases, and throughout I will explain why we as a manufacturer will be doing certain things in order to comply, and kind of, you know, how that might affect you. Then we'll wrap up by giving updates about the next steps in Tier 3, and we'll mention some finance opportunities that you or your customers can benefit from. I tried to take into consideration the fact that the audience kind of have a great variety of end users, contractors, consultants, IDNOs, ICPs, even DNOs, to be honest. So I tried to include all that's relevant to all of you, that's consistent with what we offer as Wilson Power Solutions. We could keep going on this for ages, but I'm sure you have more interesting things to do. If I forget to mention something, please ask a question. And even if I don't have the answer at hand, I will get back to you afterwards. So my name is Ayah Alfawaris. My background, I've got 2 degrees, one in engineering, electrical and computer engineering, and the other one in sustainability and business. I worked in the solar photovoltaics industry for like 6 years almost in the Middle East. And then in the UK, my experience has been with the capacity markets to peaking power plants. And then I joined Wilson Power Solutions 2 years ago, almost. And now I'm the Energy Policy Marketing and Business Development Manager. So Wilson Power Solutions is a 75-year-old family business run by the 3rd generation. You can see in the first row, the 2nd and 3rd generation, really. We're based in Leeds, Yorkshire. We have 2 sites here, and we have a 3rd one in India. I'm not sure how many employees we have, probably between 150 and 200 employees in total. We do pride ourselves into being a responsible power engineering company. We address sustainability, net zero, decarbonization in the product offering that we have. But more than that, we kind of run the business. We try to run it sustainably and to contribute to reviewing and drafting legislation with BEMA, T&D Europe, and other advocacy routes that we'll refer to later on. Our main products are transformers, distribution transformers and power transformers, as most of you know. We pioneer in the low-loss transformers, so you've definitely heard of the Wilson E3 that we keep talking about. We do supply as well packaged substations. We do build our own battery tripping units, BTUs, and we have a hire fleet. And recently, in the last year or 2, we started providing DNO-approved transformers to the IDNO and ICP market. So this is just like a nutshell about Wilson Power Solutions, what we do. But to go really talk about kind of how the conversation about transformers came about, the European Union released something called the 2020 climate and energy targets. They wanted to get 20% more energy from renewable sources, cut 20% of the greenhouse gas emissions compared to the 1990s levels, and to improve energy efficiency by 20%. And they wanted to do that by 2020. They're still reporting on that, but it was forecasted that they will hit this on time. The UK managed to reduce emissions by 42% in 2019, so we are way ahead of that. And you know that we have the net zero target to reach net zero emissions by 2050. But the European Commission believed that transformers can play a major part in achieving these targets. Why? So the EU estimates that transformers nearly waste 3% of the energy produced in Europe. So almost 3% of all energy generated across Europe. And when we say Europe, the continent. So the UK is still part of Europe, but not part of the EU. But when this started, we were still part of the EU, and the numbers of losses are insane. This kind of amount, the 2.9% amounts to 93.4 terawatt hours, and that can power the Denmark for 3 years. So we're talking about massive, massive losses that get wasted through transformers. Taking a look and a focus on the UK, network losses in the UK account for 1.5% of the country's greenhouse gas emissions. 1/4 of those network losses come from distribution transformers. So we're talking about a huge, huge, huge portion of the losses and the greenhouse gas emissions that come from distribution transformers, and these are kind of easy fixes really. So in the regulation, all the information that I'm using in the slides are taken from the Commission regulation. You've got the numbers there, and then there was an amendment that came out in 2019. They keep referring to the Blue Guide, which kind of is a huge guide that has definitions and everything. So I got as much data from it as possible. But at the same time, we are kind of involved with two different groups. There's T&D Europe, Transmission and Distribution Europe. It's like a task force. And there's BEMA, the British Electrotechnical and Allied Manufacturers Association. So kind of the conversations that we had with them, you know, kind of cleared some bits about where, you know, where the regulation did not fully cover. So these are kind of our references if you're interested. But the EU Ecodesign Regulation for transformers, it brings tougher design specifications for transformer losses. It applies to all transformers above 1 kVA, so almost everything that we deal with, not almost is. And transformers that are used in 50 Hertz electricity transmission and distribution network for industrial applications. So the regulation is divided into two phases or tiers. You have tier 1, which has been effective since July 2015, and tier 2 will become effective from July, the 1st of July actually, 2021 this year. The requirement for transformer losses aim to prevent the installation of the inefficient transformer models across the UK and Europe, and it applies to transformers placed in the market or put into service / installed anywhere within the European Union. We will explain what, you know, placed in the market or being installed means. But all conversations that we've had with BEMA and T&D Europe indicate that the UK will adopt the European standards after Brexit. So if something will change going forward, we even think that it will be either the same or tougher. So that's what we have for now. So a review of the tier 1 losses that came out probably more than 5 years ago. The European Union Commission thinks that manufacturers managed to adapt to the technology to reach tier 1 loss levels without difficulty. We can obviously confirm that. The Commission says that there are no technical barriers foreseen by manufacturers in producing transformers with tier 2 losses, and you know we know that as well. And hopefully, after 5 years from rolling out the regulation in the first place back in 2015, this will help save the Europe as a continent 16 terawatt hours annually, starting from 2020. So if you remember what we mentioned about the Denmark and how this kind of is 1/6 of the number of the amount of the energy being wasted in Europe, but it's not 100%, it's only 1/6. Why? Because unfortunately we have too many old existing transformers that are still on the network, and these are still wasting, and whereas these regulations only apply to new transformers. Before we go into the regulation in depth, it is important to note that the manufacturers and importers are responsible for the conformity of the product with the regulation. The national market surveillance authorities have more involvement going forward. They've been quiet, you know, in the past few years, but going forward they will be more active. In the UK, that would be the National Measurement and Regulation Office, NMRO. I'll keep referring to the NMRO a lot in the presentation to show you examples on when they can get involved and how you can be affected. To get familiar with the terms, to better understand what the regulation actually means and what it applies to, a product is placed on the market when it's made available for the first time in the union market. That includes the UK, obviously now. Only manufacturers or importers place products in the market. So this kind of notion of placing on the market is only reserved for importers or manufacturers. In normal situations with no concession, after the 1st of July 2021, manufacturers and importers will only have the right to transfer ownership of Tier 1 transformers, but will not have the right to transfer ownership of Tier 1 transformers, but only Tier 2, even if the contract has been signed before that. And we will explain exactly what that means in a bit. There's another term that's called making available. A product is made available on the market when supplied for distribution, consumption, or use in the European Union and the UK. The operation is reserved for distributors and some manufacturers. And what I mean by some manufacturers is that manufacturers that actually supply or sell directly to the end users. So we, as a Wilson Power Solution, for example, because we sell to end users, we are considered a distributor in that sense. So we can make products available in the market. The regulation says that after the 1st of July 2021, distributors and some manufacturers can transfer ownership of Tier 1 transformers only if they were placed in the market before that date. So in practical terms, what does that mean? Thinking of the cutoff date, we know that the 1st of July is the date that we all talk about. The EU Commission assumes that manufacturers, we are aware of the date of Tier 2 and when it should come into effect, and we should make all plans to actually meet that date. Transfer of ownership of the transformers, we can do that. We said that we can do that anytime before the 1st of July. If it's before the 1st of July, it has to be a Tier 1. So transfer of ownership is a written agreement for the transfer of product ownership after the manufacturing has taken place. So the product has to be manufactured. This is whether or without a payment, but it could be, for example, a vesting certificate or any other sort of writing agreement between the two players. So the regulation does not require a physical handover of the product / delivery. So if the product is manufactured, made for X project, for example, we just need to transfer the ownership to the end customer before the 1st of July, if it's a Tier 1 transformer. But if it's after the 1st of July, we will explain in which cases we can do that. We cannot always do it, but we can do it in some cases. So manufactured transformers can be transferred, the ownership of before the 1st of July if they are Tier 1. Now, all open inquiries will be assessed individually and requoted with Tier 2 options if we think that they won't be ready or manufactured before the 1st of July. The sales team has already started issuing requotes or providing Tier 2 alternatives if we think that the transformer will be kind of built or manufactured after the 1st of July. The NMRO might decide to witness any factory acceptance tests going forward. And as a manufacturer, we will make sure that the product that we kind of supply you with is fully compliant. But we can still deliver Tier 1 transformers after the 1st of July only if, one of the cases, if there were delays or unpredicted manufacturing delays, because that would be kind of out of our hand, and NMRO would be kind of sympathetic to a degree. We would have, though, to exhibit the initial delivery plan and causes for these delays to them if they ask. So we will, if a delay happens, then it's out of our hand. We can still deliver Tier 1 after that date if a delay happens. But yeah, it's kind of, we have to exhibit that, that wasn't the intention. So the making available bit that we talked about, when I said that, we as Wilson Power Solution can work as a distributor, it's more about stock, really. It's about tier 1 stock. So we do not intend to stockpile tier 1 transformers, as this kind of causes a conflict with the aim and spirit of the regulation. But if a manufacturer or distributor has a tier 1 transformer in stock that was manufactured before the 1st of July, they can still sell these transformers. So there should be no further work needed to be done on these transformers, including packaging. So let's say come the 1st of July and we still have tier 1 transformers that we were not able to sell before then. What we will do, we will follow the instructions and we will move these transformers out of the production area onto a holding area for completed products. They will be ready to be shipped out, and it's within the regulation that we can do that, because it's not fair to kind of just scrap stock if we have it. So kind of all manufacturers have the regulations available to them beforehand, and the EU Commission expects us to kind of plan to deplete this stock before the 1st of July where possible. But now talking about the kind of some framework agreements, which get mentioned a lot in network connection kind of cases, mostly. So transformers are usually purchased under framework agreements. In this context, purchase refers to the act of contracting with the manufacturer for the delivery of a given volume of products. The contract is deemed to have come into force on the date of the signature by the parties. Now, UK DNOs are currently working through procurement events to put in place new Tier 2 framework agreements. With kind of some DNOs are further ahead in the process than others. DNOs, we all know that they have longer approval procedures than industrial customers. Some DNOs might need to stock some Tier 1 transformers to have their ownership transferred to them before the deadline, mainly to ensure security of supply. We need to ensure that security of energy supply is maintained throughout and there's no disruption. If a DNO or you as an end user have indeed a Tier 1 transformer under your ownership, you can still install it at any date, even after the 1st of July. So we at Wilson, we supply DNO-approved unit type transformers to the UK ICP and IDNO market, and we will make a forward assessment based on forecasted requirements to ensure that Tier 1 to Tier 2 transition can be kind of adequately serviced with no disruption to supply. So basically, to wrap up the kind of the main bits of the regulation, Tier 1 has to be either fully manufactured with the ownership transferred before the 1st of July, or it has to be manufactured before the 1st of July but available in stock somewhere before then, so we can be able to sell it. So that's basically the two important bits about when Tier 1 will still be available until. Now, just to kind of show some definitions about how the regulation keeps referring to medium power transformers and large power transformers. So medium power transformers are usually rated lower than or equal to 3,150 kVA, and the highest voltage is more than 1.1 kV, but not exceeding 36 kV. Whereas large power transformers are rated anything greater than 3,150 kVA or not, and the highest voltage of the equipment is exceeding 36 kV. So it kind of, just to make it a bit clearer for you, whenever the regulation mentions medium power transformers, it is what we define as an industry distribution transformers, whereas when they mention large power transformers is what we refer to as power transformers. So kind of if they get mentioned later on, I'll remind you with what they mean. But kind of just to go onto the prices bit. So many people keep asking, you know, is the other prices going to be the same? What's going to change, etc. Simply put, to improve the efficiency of transformers, more material with superior energetic properties have to be used, in addition to increasing the cross-section of key components. So prices will increase as we use more material. The EU Commission did a study that analysed the economic viability of transformers compliant with the minimum requirements set out in Tier 2. And they found that the life cycle cost for compliant medium and large power transformers are always lower than Tier 1 compliant models. So they are more efficient, they are more economically feasible as well. And we'll kind of go through some numbers now just to show you that, you know, in numbers. Before then, kind of it's worth mentioning that we've manufactured, you know, so many products or so many transformers that are compliant or that exceed the EU Ecodesign requirements. Many of you would have ordered, you know, our Wilson E1 and E2s in the past that, you know, they'll be kind of discontinued going forward. But now we have Wilson T2 Ecotrans. So this meets Tier 2 losses, and it's made out of CRGO metal core. And this is kind of, you know, this will be the standard product. But if you want additional carbon and energy savings, a product that far exceeds any other losses in the market, we have the Wilson Wilson E3 amorphous ultra low loss. So this transformer meets Tier 2, it far exceeds it, and it sets the bar for Tier 3, and it's made of amorphous metal core. Now, just to kind of show you some changes on the standard voltage ratios that we have. So the Wilson T2, the one that meets Tier 2, will have voltage ratio of 11 kV to 433 volts, with tap settings minus plus 2.5% and minus and plus 5%. Whereas the Wilson E3 will have the voltage ratio of 11 kV to 415 volts, and the tap settings will be minus and plus 2.5%, plus and minus 5%, and in addition plus 7.5%. Well, obviously we can custom make transformers for you with any different specs, and we've done that in the past, and you probably already have purchased special transformers from us. I'm not going to go into details of the losses of transformers, but to compare between Tier 1 and Tier 2 losses, it's worth mentioning that there are two types of losses in a transformer. We have no load losses. These are known as core losses sometimes, or iron losses. The important thing about core losses is that they are present from the moment the transformer has been energized. So that's 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, always happening, always wasting energy. The second type of losses are load losses or winding losses. As the name implies, these are a product of the load current, and their magnitude depends on the loading of the transformer. So let's have a look at what sort of losses we are expected to meet. So these are some distribution transformer medium power, as you know, as called by the regulation. If you see the comparison between Tier 1 and Tier 2 numbers, you can see that the core losses in Tier 2 are 10% less than Tier 1 levels, but the winding and or / load losses are somewhere between 16 to 29% lower, depending on the rating of the transformer, obviously, and it's the combined losses kind of are what we usually look at, not just the core losses. And if we take the case of like 1000 kVA transformer, just digging a bit more, in a sense, what the directive kind of required Tier 1 in 2015, it was to kind of to have the combined losses that were 19% less than what was pre-2015. So if we're talking about anything between 19, even just in the 2000s, from 2000 until 2015, the losses, the Tier 1 managed to reduce those by 19%. But then Tier 2 is being introduced now and will become effective from July this year. That is 26% less losses compared to Tier 1. And then we have our Wilson E3 Tier 3. This product offers 37% lower losses than Tier 1. So it far exceeds kind of what Tier 2 does really. And we'll kind of mention later on a bit about, you know, Tier 3 and when it will become more clear to us with the timeline. But following on the case of the 1 MVA transformer, this is kind of a visual representation of losses that compares between market losses from the 1990s before the regulation and after the regulation for eco-design requirements. So we have Tier 1, Tier 2. You can see that Wilson E3 has 37% lower losses than Tier 1, and then 15% lower losses, excuse me, than Tier 2. If we want to look at numbers, like how much that would save you financially and in a carbon sense, if we take the case of the 1 MVA again, and on a 70% load factor, the annual savings for opting for Tier 2 compared to Tier 1 will be 13,122 kilowatt hours annually. This is what you will save. This kind of equates to nearly £2,000 savings on your electricity bill. And in addition to that, you would have reduced the associated CO2 emissions by almost 3 tons every year. That's kind of equivalent to avoiding nearly 17,260 kilometers on the roads. So kind of a lot of savings just by, you know, opting for Tier 2. And that is good because this proves that, you know, even if you pay extra, you're getting more savings every year. Now, to look at the payback kind of scenario, again, comparing the Tier 1 to Tier 2, but, you know, it's easier for you to see this. You can see that, so what we've done, we increased the tariff 2% every year, the electricity tariff. We started at 0.14 kind of, or 14 pence per kilowatt hour, with an average of 15 pence over the first 5 years. So if you can see after, for example, 5 years, well, first of all, the break even will be in a year. And then after 5 years, you would have saved extra £7,500 and 15 tons of CO2. If we jump onto, I don't know, 20 years, 16 tons of CO2 and £43,600. By year 30, just by, you know, getting Tier 2 instead of Tier 1, you would have saved extra £74,354 and 91 tons of CO2. So now we know that the numbers kind of, they prove that, yeah, Tier 2 still has even a better financial sense than Tier 1. So it is good to, you know, fight climate change and at the same time reduce running costs. We do, before I go forward, actually, I want to mention that we do have even better kind of savings, let's say, for the Wilson E3, especially in the case of replacements. We have a complete different CPD looking mainly at the losses and the savings and the carbon and energy savings that you can get from utilizing the ultra low loss transformers, Wilson E3. You can book that with us if you just contact any of the sales managers or me personally. We can book that for you, and you can look at the numbers with more focus. But this time we're kind of just focusing on the tier 2 really. So now onto the concessions. So concessions are a huge part of the amendment of this regulation. So this is kind of a new bit. In some cases, complying with tier 2 will not be required, and an exemption to go for tier 1 might be allowed. These concessions are often based on 3 things. You have project limitations, and then you have the type of application, as in what the transformer is supporting basically. And then you have technology-based ones. So the technology-based ones, they're not really a concession, but they get some sort of like a special treatment with different loss requirements. This kind of depends on the type of the technology, the transformer technology. So for example, dry type or different voltage ratios, etc. As I said, I'll try to bring what's relevant. We'll be focusing on concessions that kind of apply to products that we provide, but beyond that, you can check the regulation or come back to me with questions later on, and I'll try and help you find your answer if you need it. To start with the concessions, so case number 1, situations where medium power transformers, or what we call distribution transformers, are being installed in existing urban substation locations with space and weight constraints that affect the maximum size and weight of the replacement transformer. In this case, the regulation allows for a concession to tier 1. So again, just to mention again, if it's a replacement case for a distribution transformer with limitations when it comes to space and weight constraints, then you are allowed to go for tier 1 after the deadline. It's fine. So that's the first case. Second case, it's the case of a new build or a replacement of a large power transformer related to disproportionate costs associated with their transportation and or installation. So the previous one only kind of covers the replacements. This one covers new builds and replacements, and it kind of, even if there aren't kind of weight or space constraints, but there will be disproportionate costs when it comes to transportation or installation. For big power transformers, then you are allowed to install tier 1 after this date. Moving forward, higher transformers. We had a few of these actually asking us. So the regulation does not apply to higher transformers that are designed to provide power temporarily. So examples, for example, cases of emergencies, unplanned occurrences such as like power failure, substation refurbishment, etc. These transformers must not be designed to permanently upgrade an existing substation, but if they are designed for temporary use, then they can be a tier 1 instead of tier 2. They don't have to comply with the regulation after this date. So this is higher transformers, and then we have refurbished transformers. So with the refurb, there were so many questions that we had in the past really. Compliance is not required if the refurb included a replacement of a damaged component without a drastic change to the transformer's performance, type, or purpose. So these transformers have been placed in the market prior to the regulation. They can be hired or sold out, and they're not considered a new product. And this kind of means that they don't have to comply with tier 2 requirements, but that's only if we replace a damaged component without a drastic change to the performance. But there is a case where the refurb transformers have to comply. This if the refurb includes replacement of the magnetic core or part of it, or replacement of one or more of the windings. In this case, a reassessment would be required, and the conformity and conformity with Tier 2 will be required, so they have to be a Tier 2 transformer if the refurb work includes any change to the magnetic core, the core, or the one or more of the windings. So this is kind of the refurb. So there are two different cases here. But obviously, you know, if someone comes to us with a refurb, you know, business, we'll assess it accordingly and let you know. So there are other applications where concessions are granted. We don't always kind of come through these as Wilson Power Solutions, but I thought I'd mention them very briefly. We have earthing or grounding transformers. There are instrument transformers, transformers that are designed to be directly connected to a furnace, transformers that are designed to be installed on offshore wind turbine systems. There was a bit of kind of like a discussion or unclarity about, you know, the transformers that go onto solar or onshore wind farms. These transformers will not get a concession, but only if the transformer is specifically designed and intended to provide a DC power supply to electronic or rectifier loads. As I said, this exemption does not include transformers that are intended to provide an AC supply from DC sources, such as transformers for wind turbines, onshore wind turbines, and photovoltaic applications. And then we have railway applications. We have transformers with separate or auto-connected windings connected to an AC or DC contact line directly or through a converter, if they are used in fixed installations for railway applications. In addition, you will have the traction transformers specifically designed to be mounted on rolling stock. So there are some cases for railway applications, depending on exactly where the transformer will be kind of installed and what its function is. And then similar kind of concessions are granted for starting transformers, testing transformers, welding transformers. So these transformers are kind of manufactured for a very, very specific use. These will be given a concession or an exemption from the regulation. They can be Tier 1 after that date. Continuing, we have transformers designed for explosion-proof applications and underground mining. We have medium or power transformers designed to contribute to the safety of nuclear installations, and then transformers specifically designed for deep water submerged applications, and then kind of some what they call interface transformers. These are medium voltage to medium voltage transformers up to 5 MVA. They're used as interface transformers in a network voltage conversion program, and they're usually placed at the junction between two voltage levels of two medium voltage networks that need to be able to cope with like an emergency overload. So as I mentioned, these are like very specific cases that we might come across or not in the future, but all these applications that I mentioned get concessions. They can be Tier 1, not Tier 2 after the regulation kicks in. So the exemptions, they must be written in the technical documentation with details provided, providing the reason for the exemption. A letter shall be sent from Wilson Power Solutions, for example, or any other manufacturer indeed, to the NMRO or the National Market Surveillance Authority in that country. The letter should notify them about the technical or economic justification of any kind of, disproportionate costs or limitations, site limitations, etc. Now, we don't know, like the market surveillance authorities in other countries in the EU. We're still discussing with BEMA and TND Europe on, who we should contact and what communication channel do we have there. But even if we're kind of, transporting the or supplying the transformer to Europe, we will still have to contact the National Market Surveillance Authority in that country. If the transformer is provided through a tendering process, and that's what might affect some of you here, analysis of the bid and the award decision should be provided by the manufacturer. Now, we think this is a bit unfair because if we're kind of dealing with a contractor that chooses rightfully not to disclose the end user or the project details, we will still be liable, not them. So, but kind of because we are liable, we will be asking for proof. But if you choose not to provide it, we will ask you, details about the product, so we include that in our documentation. But if you choose not to provide it, we will have to write like a clause in the contract to kind of waive liability. There are a lot of questions on how and who to contact, even in NMRO in the UK. But until this is finalised, we agreed with BEMA, the member trade organisation for that, to kind of follow this approach. And we recommend that you do the same. So we will, whenever we have any case of concession, what we will do, we will create an internal folder documenting all concession cases. So if the watchdog comes knocking on our door at one point, we'll have all the right data in the right place. And we do advise you to do the same. If you get any concessions as a kind of contractor, do keep a local folder where you keep track of all these cases, so you can report it if you need to. So kind of to the last bit of it, which was the technology sort of concessions or cases. This is not really a concession, so this is kind of it's a special treatment. As I said, in special cases, if the technology changes, you get special treatments. So if the voltage changes, the transformer loss requirements change, and they allow for kind of more losses, or let's say, in other words, less efficiency. And as you can see here, some details about it. I'm not going to dig into it, but the losses can be kind of 10 to 20% more if the voltage ratio changes. Obviously, if you come to us asking for a specific transformer, like a special one, we will give you the right losses that you are required. You don't need to know that, but if you are a consultant and you're specifying something, you might need to have a look at these. We get many people asking us about cast resin transformers and dry type transformers. Some applications specify them. It is worth mentioning that dry type tier 2 losses are not the same as liquid immersed tier 2 losses. Yes, it is called a tier 2, but it has a completely different loss requirements. The dry transformers, dry type, are usually 10%. They have 10% higher core losses and probably like 20% on average more winding losses compared to the tier 2 oil-filled transformers. Just to mention that tier 2 dry does not equal tier 2 liquid, so you wouldn't expect the same energy savings really. If you look here at the lower losses, you can kind of get the percentage of what I did is kind of compared the combined losses, not just core or winding, combined losses of the dry type tier 2 to a liquid immersed tier 2 and Wilton E3. So when we compared them, when we compare for example, the dry type to oil filled tier 2, you can see that on average the losses are kind of around 20% lower in the liquid tier 2. But when you compare it to Wilton E3, you have 30% lower losses from E3 than tier 2 dry type or cast resin. So cast resin tier 2, in a nutshell, will not give you the same energy, financial or carbon savings as an oil-filled tier 2. Now, important part of the regulation that people kind of usually overlook, the regulation says that installation of more efficient transformers than the regulation requires is strongly recommended whenever economically justified. This is why we have kind of Wilson E3 that sets the bar for Wilson for Tier 3. As we said, Wilson E3 has 37% lower losses compared to the product available in the market now. We will obviously keep improving, kind of our amorphous offering and try to always be ahead of the regulation. But it is important to mention that, when you compare Tier 2 to Wilson E3, you're not comparing like to like. You have completely different levels and different savings. So you need to keep that into consideration if you are going through, a tendering process or whatever decision making that you have to make. This slide really is for customers that usually come to us asking, why is your Wilson E3 amorphous not as cheap as X, or or other suppliers have amorphous transformers. I want to say that not all amorphous are the same, really. So even in the best case scenarios, the best designs that you're going to get, the energy wasted through the windings is probably between 3 to 5 times the energy wasted through the core. So to get the good level of losses, you need a product that tackles both aspects, the windings and the core of the transformer. And usually we recommend that you ask about the combined losses, not just the core type, or that it has a core, amorphous core. No, ask about the combined losses. To achieve the lowest combined losses in the amorphous to this level that we talk about, we used kind of more winding material, whether it's copper or aluminium. We used more in the cross section. This results in lower current density, less friction, and then that means kind of less heat and less energy wasted. It's important to mention that we have experience with kind of producing, designing, and manufacturing and installing these amorphous transformers. We have over 1,300 low loss transformers out in the market. They're installed, they're not having any problem. Amorphous low loss transformers won in 2019 the IEMA Sustainability Impact Awards for the new product category. The IEMA is the Institute of Environmental Management and SEM. So kind of, as I mentioned, if you want details about the Wilson E3, we have a whole separate CPD for that. But it's important to mention that, when you're comparing, make sure that you compare the right, like to like, or, combined losses to combined losses, rather than just, the core of a transformer or something. We do have on our website a payback calculator. You can find it on the homepage, or if you go on the link there, it provides you with carbon, financial, and energy savings for the Wilson E3 transformers. So if you want to look at additional or beyond the regulation that we have, this is where you can start looking. And you can just kind of to receive detailed breakdown of the savings by email as well. This is the first payback calculator in its kind in the UK, so we're happy that you have access to it, and we're happy to help you with more savings if you need. Many people ask us about the Tier 3, because we keep mentioning it in our kind of marketing sometimes. The EU Commission will review the regulation and will present the assessment and the draft revision proposal by the 1st of July 2023. So that is when we'll first hear about kind of Tier 3. We'll have an introduction to stricter Tier 3 requirements. They will include a review of the concession cases. There are talks about utilizing PEI or peak efficiency index of transformers alongside the loss levels. There's a possibility of adopting technology neutral approach. So, kind of dry type transformers will not get special loss requirements, for example. There will be a possibility to cover other aspects in the regulation, such as environmental impact, including noise or material efficiency. At the moment, it mainly focuses on losses, but it might go beyond that, which is kind of good for the environment, really. Very quickly, I'll just mention that there are kind of some funds that you can apply for depending on which industry you work with or what your customers are. But just to kind of give you some examples, there's the IETF, or the Industrial Energy Transformation Fund. This is a fund by the government in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. It's available for manufacturers or data centers. The applications will open from March till July. I can provide you more details about what you can get from them. But kind of just to mention that the minimum value of funding you can get is £100,000, and the proportion of how much the government will cover out of the expenses depends on how big the industry is or where geographically it is in the UK. I put here an example just to show you kind of what the, for example, if we talk about, I don't know, a power transformer replacement, which would be around, I don't know, £200,000 or more than £200,000, the regulation, if it's a small business, the government, can cover 50% of that. So, you'll get, £100,000 grant value, and then you'll have to pay £100,000. So there are kind of some good funds for that. Not a lot, not as much as we hope, but they're good to start with. There's another one you probably have heard of, mainly for universities, NHS hospitals, and trusts, some local authorities. It's SALIX funding, so they want to kind of drive the decarbonisation in the UK, and they offer 100% kind of cost covering, but it's a loan. It's an interest-free 5-year loan. Kind of just given to the private sector, the public sector really, and it says that the funding can only be used for any product that goes beyond the regulation standards. So, for example, it applies for the Wilson E3, and we have the low loss transformers kind of listed amongst the technologies that they provide. But as I said, if you need helping with any of the paybacks, the calculations, just send me an email and I'll help you with that. This is kind of just briefly what the regulation entails really, and thank you so much for listening. I will send a follow-up email with the recording and the documents and everything that you need, but if I now may ask the team to come on camera, and if you want to ask a question now, type it in the question box. If you want to talk, there's a hand symbol that you can click on. If you click on it, we'll unmute you if you want to talk. So if you want to talk, click on the hand symbol. But if you want to just ask a question in writing, you can type it in. And I'll stop viewing my slides, but my team, if you can put your cameras and mics on, please.
Thanks, Ayah. So we've got quite a few questions that we're still answering in the background, written questions. Will people still receive these answers, do you know, Ayah, via email if they come after this closes?
We can, yeah. Can send them by email.
Yeah, so if we don't get it done in this session time, then we can certainly do that afterwards and make sure that we mop up any unanswered questions, because there's a lot of variance to the questions, a lot of very interesting ones. So please keep them coming. So yeah, as Ayah says, if anybody's got any questions that they'd like to ask spoken over this session, please raise your hand or just keep them coming via the
oh yeah, I can see there are a few questions coming.
There's lots and lots of questions, Ayah.
Yeah.
We've been like a call centre in the background. We're like tapping away, passing them around, which is great. The interaction. It's difficult to talk and read the question and answer the question, I suppose.
It is, and it just shows what a complex question this whole tier change is. And of course, there's always going to be a lot of unusual, requests and possibilities that are thrown out from it. So we have to take a view on each one of those line by line. But the frequently asked questions document, Ayah, is that actually one of the attachments, or is that something we can send out separately?
It's on the handout. People can install it now. I'm just reading the questions. I can answer a few. So there's one that says, where transformers are purchased by a contractor from the manufacturer on behalf of the end user, where does the placed on the market sit? Is the transfer of ownership, is it the transfer of ownership to the contractor or the end user? So as I said, the regulation, who has to kind of comply with them are the manufacturers. So anything that happens after we give the ownership to whoever does not matter, because that means that the product is already placed on the market. So it really means that, you know, if we transfer ownership to you as a contractor before the 1st of July, that if it's a tier 1, that's what we have to do. So anything that you do after that, whether you keep it under your own ownership, you give it to your end user, you install it today, you install it after 10 years, you can do that, as long as we transfer the ownership of tier 1 transformers, if that was the plan, to you before the 1st of July. So it is between us and the contractor or the first buyer from us. If you are buying from us, you know, then it's between us and you, really. Hope that's clear.
There's another question. I think Harry's responding in the background, but it was about what is the effects of the tier change in the physical size and weights of the transformers, and also the volume of oil in the tank. With the requirement to fund over 1,000 litres of oil, there's a concern that the more eco solution could be an impact on the civil requirements. Yes, we're actually finalising the suite of drawings for tier 2. We do have them available now, depending on the size that you're wanting. But yes, indeed, they are a little bit bigger. They do have a little bit more oil in, or MIDEL, of course, if there's any waterways nearby or any restrictions there. And we, of course, fully fund many transformers now, Harry. I think you'll agree with me.
Yeah.
Harry's behind me. It's a social distance appropriate for this situation. But many more people are actually asking for bunded, 110% bunding requirements, which we can offer as well. So Hugh, we can just send you the drawings if you want to get in touch separately.
Yeah.
There's a question about, did you advise any organizations on the local government decarbonisation grant recently advertised? I haven't personally looked at it. I'm not sure if there's a grant for the kind of the technology or the products, as in, do you get that as an organization, or do you get it to install some products in there? I'll look into it if Trevor can send me the name of it if it's not that. But I can look into it and send in. Usually, if we know about a grant that applies to transformers, we usually send emails out. So, but I'll dig into that one.
We've got a question from Steve Harrison. What's the life expectancy of the amorphous core technology, and how has this been tested, given its relatively new concept to distribution transformers? Relatively new, Harry. I think probably early 70s.
Yeah, new yeah, to UK maybe, but not to the,
yeah,
you know.
It's new to the UK, but it's very much not new to the world.
Yeah.
So even, we can feel fairly comfortable with that. New to the UK, yes, it is.
Even UK is more than 10 years now. It's approximately 10 years.
Yeah, that's right. What about life expectancy, Harry?
Life expectancy of a transformer depends on the insulation used in the windings. So it's the same insulation whether it's a conventional transformer or amorphous. So it's the same 25-30 years lifetime.
Probably even more, but we're saying 30 years as a sort of standard piece. And of course, we're doing our payback calculations and the longer term savings made, we also put that to 30 years as well.
Do we have any people wanting to talk? No?
Can't see any hands up.
Everyone's shy. It's been brilliant to have so many questions. So super.
Yeah, just shows what an important topic it is to cover. So, are we going to make this available on our website, the video, Ayah? How would we be able to review this?
Yes, people will receive automatic emails from GoToWebinar with the recording, really. But yeah, I think I'll send up like a follow-up email to everyone with all the handouts and links that might benefit them. Even can include the regulation, really, if they're interested. But then they have our email addresses, and we're happy to answer anyone with any questions they have.
That's great, thank you. Couple more questions just popped in. We've got, what's the standard lead time on a large power transformer for a tier 2 equivalent right now? Effectively, it's the same lead time as a tier 1 transformer. We've got to obviously go through the design stages, the same as we would for a special power transformer. So lead times essentially the same. For distribution transformers, obviously Wilson Power Solutions will be stocking tier 2 where possible, and so we'll have greatly reduced lead times there. But effectively, as long as you were going for a manufactured to order transformer, the tier 2 will not affect that lead time.
Harry, how many weeks does it power at the moment? So 25?
Yeah.
26 weeks. So just for clarity, if it was a
33 by 11.
Yeah, 33, 11, 25 MVA, for example, you'd be looking at 24, 26 weeks delivery. If you're more than welcome to order one tomorrow. So that's what we're talking about, 26 weeks.
And
there's a question about the maintenance costs for tier 3 compared to tier 1, Harry. So Wilson E3 to Wilson tier 1.
It's a difference. It's exactly same whether it's a tier 1 or tier 2 or tier 3. So same maintenance schedules.
Same maintenance costs. Yeah.
And Ed, is there a cut-off threshold date for pricing?
Yeah, well, obviously the tier 2 comes into effect on the 1st of July, so it has to be placed in the market by that point. So it really is dependent upon what type of transformer you're needing. So if we've got that in stock, potentially you could have it in 24 hours, potentially if the needs were that great. Normally we're working on a 4 to 6 week minimum lead time from stock. But obviously if it's a large power transformer, looking at 25-week window, that cut-off's already gone now. So it's dependent on whether it's stocked and what type of transformer.
Harry, what are the test certificates available for T2 and E3 transformers with standard ratings?
Yeah, we are going through the type at the moment for a tier 2 range. They will be available by end of this month. So I think it's asked by Ben.
Yeah.
Ben, let me know, Ben, if you need anything, we can supply those details.
And a really good question, Harry, is there any cost benefit in using a higher rated tier transformer rather than go for the E3 version?
I'm assuming that means tier 2.
Yeah.
Is there any benefit in using a higher rated tier 2 transformer rather than going E3, Harry?
No, because the no load losses for the higher transformer will be higher compared to E3, and our E3 transformers are very low no load losses, which are 24/7. So
yeah. No hands up at this stage. Anybody, any last questions?
I don't think there is.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for everybody joining. And I think we'll call that session closed, and we'll follow up as mentioned earlier. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, if you have any questions, just email us and we'll send you the recording. Thank you for attending. Cheers.
Thanks a lot. Cheers. Bye-bye.